Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. The latest tuning notes are live, and they're linked in the description down below. They're going live on September 3rd. Today, August 30th, my birthday, Blizzard came through and put up some big Discipline Beast buffs. So we're going to go over those real quick, how I think they're going to stand in the meta, and which other healers also I think need some more support. So first and foremost, Oracle Discipline Priest gets a buff to Preventative Measures. Preventative Measures is this talent right here, which increases Powered Shield Absorb and the damage dealt by Penance, Smite, and Holy Nova. They'd already buffed the damage by Penance and Smite, and now they are buffing the absorption effect out of Powered Shield. So instead of 25%, it's now 40%. Now, Oracle Disc was already really strong at putting out absorbs, especially when it worked with the tier set bonus or in conjunction with the tier set bonus where your smites and penances increase your next shield. And so this kind of continues that trend. And while shields are not always great in terms of spot healing, if you are blasting a shield into somebody that's low health, you still have to push up the health pools to begin with. It does do a good job of increasing your preventative measures. And so when there's very well projected damage, I would say things like Dawnbreaker and the dots that the lieutenants deal to you, or the really well projected burst damage out of things like Stone Vault, second and third bosses, and Dawnbreaker. You can actually soak up a ton of damage with this incoming buff. It makes Rapture a very good cooldown. Running something like Exaltation for the increased amount of Rapture shields is going to be very good in an Oracle Disc build. If you're interested in an Oracle Disc and Plus build, by the way, they're in my hero talent page on my Wowhead guides in the description down below. More importantly, though, Atonement got a massive buff for dungeons. Instead of 70% increased healing, when this first came out, it was a 50% increased healing, by the way. And it went to 70%, I believe, in beta, and now it's at 100%. And so all of the videos and all the talk I've had about the struggles that Disc has had in terms of its output has really been getting rectified, which is fantastic to see. This is a really heavy buff for an M+ environment, which is really vital. There were times I was doing Grim Batol and the massive negative absorbs would go out on the entire party, and I just couldn't heal it. I just didn't have enough output. This helps a ton in dealing with this incoming damage. And even if Oracle was the one who got directly buffed, this also really helps Voidweaver Disc because it helps your Atonement output quite a bit when you're lacking in your pet uptime, you're lacking in your squid uptime. Voidweaver's burst with Mind Blast, Entropic Rift, and your Void Wraith was already really, really strong. And so having just a greater amount of overall Atonement output is going to help you here. I actually have no idea what the direct impact of the critical healing was. I didn't see this massive drop off in my crit healing in dungeons when I was playing in beta, but well, we'll say that any good fix like this is going to be nice to have. More importantly, I think the Shadow Word Pain and Purge the Wicked buff is going to be very nice. Throughout all of beta, Shadow Word Pain and Purge the Wicked have been really awful, to the point that if I'm in Shadow Covenant uptime, I'm never really reapplying my dots, and usually applying and spreading, really applying my dots is the thing I only do at the beginning of pulls, and then I just kind of let Penance go on from there. So I would say that this is really nice to start seeing, because Shadow Word Pain and Purge the Wicked are kind of like what Mistweaver has with their Awakened Jadefire, where the more enemies that you end up having, the more healing you can end up doing. Now, I still don't think that Purge the Wicked is going to be super strong, that you could just dot everything and chill, but every little bit is going to help for sure, because the dots, ever since the rework in Season 3, have been really a weak spot for Disc. And while I don't expect the class to be like a dot spec, it's a little odd when you don't really feel a big difference between having your dots up and not having your dots up. So that's great to be able to see. As I mentioned, this is the Oracle Disc M Plus build that I have on my Wowhead guides. It's on the hero talent page. I still don't think that Oracle's going to be the best option for a key environment. I did suggest taking uppies, and honestly, you could even drop a point of maybe Train of Thought if you wanted more cooldown reduction to give you more uppies. Unfortunately, uppies is still not a great cooldown to lean upon. It'll help you somewhat with some of the burst damage you have to deal with. The penance damage is going to hit really hard, but there's a lot of floor effects that can still kill you even if you're flying above them. It just immobilizes you and you can kind of just drop down into fire. There's still a lot of problems that you have to deal with. I would say that Oracle with this buff becomes more viable, and I don't think it's quite competitive with Voidweaver just yet for really high keys, but it's certainly gotten miles and miles better. I think that the big surprise throughout all of these changes is that nothing has really happened to things like Void Summoner, where you're getting additional cooldown reduction to your pet. This, I think, is like the ideal spot that they need to make some more changes to, both to make up for our lack of tier set from last expansion, but also to kind of smooth out the spec, because having low haste and high haste is extremely polarizing with how much uptime you have for your pet, both in raids and in Mythic Plus. And so I'm very surprised that this hasn't gotten touched yet or hasn't gotten edited yet. And so it's a really kind of unfortunate situation. I'd love to see some kind of changes going on there. And I'd also love to see, honestly, an even lower cooldown on Bender, just kind of in general, and them to sort of space out the uses between Shadow Fiend and Mindbender. I think Shadow Fiend should continue to get more buffs to be really strong for like a raid environment and to be like the preferred raid option on a 1.5 or 45-second timers, and kind of like lock them into the 45-second timers and nothing more, so that when you get high haste at the end of expansions, that it won't be too insane and you won't just sit there like a smite turret 24/7. But if you have low uptime, or sorry, if you have high uptime on a lower strength Mindbender, then you're not going to be too like polarized in a dungeon where you have tons of healing 1 minute and then you have no healing the next, because that was a huge issue, especially on fights like Khajiit where there was steady damage, that if you had squid uptime, you were fine. If you didn't, everyone's like rotting out and dying. So this is a very good change, and it's very good to like get us in the right direction. And I would certainly say from a tier list perspective, this is the Mythic Plus tier list that I made before all these changes, that I had Disc Priest at a help level, as you can see right there. I had it at a help level. I think it's much more closer to the solid level now. And while I think that Holy is still going to crank a little bit more output and be a little more flexible for the incoming damage we have, I think the Disc got some really, really good assistance. You could definitely run Oracle if you'd like to, even though I think Void Weaver's still going to be a bit better, since when you go into a dungeon environment, the things that are the most threatening on a lot of these boss fights are the burst damage. On Edna, it's the combination of like dots getting cleared with the pillars and the stomp right before you kind of have like a cooldown period to chill. On Skarmorak, you benefit from Void Weaver's extra damage to targets that have absorbs on them, for example, right? You have a lot of different things that help you with the burst damage. There's not too many dungeons in this incoming season that are all like steady, consistent damage encounters, like a Khajiit type encounter. And so as a result, I think that Void Weaver is going to be a little bit more well-suited to the dungeons that we have going into it in this incoming season. But like I said, it's a lot better. It is so much better now for Disc, and I'm really excited to see him. That being said, all of the rest of these changes, like I said, they're going to be linked in the description down below. They really don't add anything else for the other healers, which is super surprising. I think a lot of people, now that they're getting like Resto Druid in their hands, are starting to see that Resto Druid is like hardcore dependent upon regrowth and not much else, and their HOTS just really don't do a whole lot else to be able to assist, which is insanely unfortunate. So I'm really surprised about that. I wouldn't be surprised to see either like Prez or Shaman get a couple like tuning knocks, maybe if they're going to be like -3% in their healing or something along those lines. I wouldn't be surprised, but maybe that's going to happen a little bit closer to the raid, since we're going to have these changes on September 3rd, and then September 10th is actually when the heroic raid's going to drop. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see next week a few more healer changes, and we'll make sure we have some more updates going into that. But that wraps it up for our changes, as the rest of them are all DPS focused. We'll keep an eye out if there's any other tank changes, because that could certainly have an impact on M+ with what tanks you'd be healing and how easy it is to heal them. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time. Yeah.